great about local government, why I love local government, why I've been involved in it in almost 20 years now, is you really can make a difference. You know, and all the students watching this show should pay attention to that too. I mean, you know, I can't tell you the number of local campaigns I've worked on where just my being involved in it really made a difference, and other people too. But see, the problem, you know, when you get involved in national politics or something like that, is it's on such a larger scale that, you know, you're not going to have the same kind of contribution as a volunteer, as an activist that you have on the local level. And that's why I enjoy it, and that's why I've been doing it, you know, local politics for 20 years, newspaper for 10 years now. It's a lot of fun. I couldn't imagine doing anything else.
And that's why when local politics, you know the people you go knocking on doors on and everything else.
Or, by the way, or in many cases, we've grown up together. I've known them for many years. You know, I was mentioning I've known Stephen Fenton and other people. It's a very special relationship in a small town to know people. They're not just your constituents; they're also your neighbors. So it's a big deal.
And John Mirisch, he put residents first because I guess he is one of the younger ones on the city council, and he has kids here, and I guess his parents live here,
right?
And so I guess he's very familiar with this, and he wants the residents first. And I believe that's a good priority for the city council, because before, I'm not saying that they weren't putting residents first, but they had their priorities in a different order.
That's correct. And listen, there was a perception, you know, whether it was valid or not, that big developers were calling the shots. I mean, you know, you had two or three major development projects that took up a lot of time and attention to the city council.
Montage being one of them.
Montage being one of them, the Hilton project being another. You know, whether you're for or against it, there's no doubt that it took up a lot of time. And the council at that time felt that it was good for the city, it was good for business. But there was also a feeling amongst some of the residents that their needs were not being met. And by the way, that's very closely tied to the permit issue.
Yeah.
Because
that's why people leave.
Well, that, and also that people felt that wait a minute, what about the residents? We're spending all this time on the permits. What about the resident kids who are fighting to, you know, to live here and that sort of thing? So, you know, the two issues are very cyclical, I think you'll see. You know, you go through some years where it's all about the residents, and a couple years where it's all about the businesses, and then sort of the cycle repeats itself. But, you know, there's no right answer. That's another interesting thing about government. It's very complicated. All these issues are very complex. But at the end of the day, you just hope that you have a council that reflects what the community wants. And we're going to see that in the coming months.
And with the during these hard economic times, they still are giving their portion of the JPA.
Right.
Even though, unfortunately, youth in government has been stopped.
Right.
I think we're very fortunate that it has a city that is willing to give us the legal maximum, 20% of the school budget.
Right. It's about $10 million.
Yes. To the schools, and how they can continue doing that. And I'm assuming Mr. Colin will not do that.
Well, we'll continue to
cut.
Right. Well, listen. First of all, he's going to follow the orders of the council. The council calls the shots on that. But the council knows why there's a deep connection between the city and schools, and some of them are former school board members involved in schools themselves. And so, no, they know that. I don't think you're going to see that cut anytime soon.
Yeah, and that's one reason why Beverly Hills is not hit as hard by this financial mess.
That's correct.
What is the council's biggest issues in the new year?
Well, I think, first of all, acclimating the new city manager to the community is going to be part of it. I think you're going to see Councilmember Mirisch is very passionate about pension reform. I think you're going to see some more talk about that. And I think in March, you're going to see a new mayor come in. Jimmy Delshad will be mayor for the second time. He's currently the vice mayor. Incidentally, I went to Beverly with his kids, so there's another example of small town and knowing people for many years. And I think he's going to bring his own flair to the office, as he always does. Jimmy's great with the media. That's one of his big specialties. When he was mayor last time, he was, you know, in front of the United Nations and going to New York and doing all these different things. And so I think you'll see all of that. And then I also think you're going to see, well, with the school board, once the permit issue dies down, I think you're going to see other changes and interesting things that they're going to work on. And I assume you're going to have maybe Mr. Fenton on in a future episode, and he'll tell you about some of the things he's working on.
Yeah, and the two are very close, like you said. And there was, when Honorable Fenton was on the council, he was very involved with the school board as well. And Dr. Bryan was a former school board president, so it's all very interrelated. And Dr. Bryan also, who's very concerned about the people in the city, he's a doctor. He's a city doctor.
Right.
And Mr. Brucker, or Honorable Brucker, who has kids that went through the district. So I think that Beverly Hills will stay fine, like you said, and that's going to have a hard impact on all the younger children in the school district as they come up, and hopefully they won't be affected a whole lot by this economic.
Well, you know, I've been through a bunch of different boom and bust cycles, and what I can tell you is we always manage to get through it. You know, it's not the end of the world, whatever it is, and even if one program or whatever gets cut, sometimes the next year it gets brought back. It's not the end of the road. But again, what I personally believe is a fundamental component of the schools here, and something we need to preserve, is this idea that you have tight involvement with the community. Because again, you don't have that in a lot of places. And if that's something we lose in the coming years, then we're really going to have problems. So hopefully that's not something we're going to see.
And like that, Mr. Stan King, he's part of the National Track Federation, and he helps out at all the cross-country and track meets. And I know that, speaking on behalf of them, they are very happy that they have his help, and they continue his support, and that's because he's very involved, he's dedicated. He went through the school district, his kids and everything else, and I saw him at a few city functions, and he just wants to make sure that the kids have the opportunity to do what they want to be able to do and get into a good college. And I know that the board is very adamant about that as well.
Right.
And I know that in the school district, they still have plans for many projects throughout the school district, even though there is the budget cuts that have happened. And I know that we have several good people on the board, or the whole board is good, and between all the assistant superintendents and the superintendent, they'll figure out a way to make sure everything stays status quo.
Sure.
Now, you being the man that brings us this every Friday, and if you don't know what this is the last weekly edition of 2009. It has all the major headlines on the front, and of course with head writer Mr. Cole.
Well, Rudy Cole is actually a columnist. Yeah, he does.
How do you do this? How does this come about?
It's not easy. It's a lot of work. Listen, we've been doing it for 10 years now, over 530 issues, and we put it out every week. We try to cover what's going on. We try to sum up what the news of the week is. And one of the major issues that's always differentiated our paper from some of the competition is we have heavy coverage of schools. You know, exactly what we were talking about earlier. The community loves schools. They want to read about it. They want to know about who the new assistant principal is, or whatever the issue of the day is. They're very into it. And that's what we do. We give it to them, and they love it. So it seems to be working.
And this is what makes Mr. Gross the Beverly Hills political analyst of his own right, and that's one of the reasons why I have him here. Thank you so much for attending. Thank you, Beverly Hills. Have a good afternoon. I will be back next week with USC political science professor Dr. Ange Marie Hancock.